It was the summer of 1968. In the grimy, working-class streets of Scotswood, Newcastle, England, children played freely outside, as they always had. Parents didn't worry. This was a tight-knit neighborhood. Everyone knew everyone. But that summer, something unthinkable was happening. Children were turning up dead. And when police finally uncovered the truth, the identity of the killer, it shook not just Britain, but the entire world. The murderer was an 11-year-old girl named Mary Bell. To understand what Mary Bell did, you first have to understand where Mary Bell came from. Because her story doesn't begin with murder. It begins with something far older, suffering. Mary Flora Bell was born on May 26, 1957, in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. From the very first moments of her life, she was unwanted. When hospital nurses attempted to hand the newborn baby to her mother for the first time, her mother, a woman named Betty Bell, looked at the infant and said, "Take this thing away from me." Those 5 words would define Mary's entire childhood. Betty Bell was a deeply troubled woman. She was an alcoholic, a prostitute who frequently traveled to Glasgow for work, and by many accounts, she was also mentally unstable. Some family members and psychologists later suspected she suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a disturbing condition where caregivers deliberately harm those in their care to gain attention and sympathy. Betty didn't just neglect Mary. She actively tried to harm her. On one occasion, she dropped her daughter from a first-floor window. On another, she fed young Mary sleeping pills, disguising them as sweets. When Mary was just 1 year old, she nearly overdosed on medication that had been mysteriously placed within her reach. When Mary was 3, she and her brother were found eating small blue pills, pills that family members believed Betty had given them. As a young child, Mary's stomach had to be pumped more than once. Each time, Betty would explain it away as an accident. But the pattern was impossible to ignore. Family members repeatedly offered to take Mary in, to give her a safe home and a proper upbringing. Betty refused every single time. She would not let Mary go, but she would not protect her either. And then it got worse. Betty Bell worked as a dominatrix. And according to Mary's own account, given decades later to journalist Gitta Serini, Betty began allowing her clients to sexually abuse Mary when she was just 4 or 5 years old. Betty allegedly participated in some of these sessions herself. Mary, bound and blindfolded, was subjected to horrors that no child should ever have to imagine, let alone experience. At school, Mary was unpredictable. Teachers noted she was remarkably intelligent, sharp, articulate, quick. But she was also volatile. She had sudden mood swings, she was defiant, and she struggled to connect with other children. She fought often. She was cruel in ways that went beyond typical childhood roughhousing. She was observed attempting to strangle other children, not in play, but with genuine, focused intent. On one occasion, a neighbor witnessed Mary attempting to scattered around him. His genitals had been partially mutilated with a pair of scissors. And on his stomach, someone had carved a crude letter M, scratched in with a razor blade. This was no accident. This was deliberate, methodical, almost ritualistic. The police now knew they had a killer on their hands. A sadistic one. But they were still looking for an adult. Perhaps a predator who had targeted the children of Scotswood. They never imagined they were looking for a little girl. Detective Chief Inspector James Dobson led the investigation. As police canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing families and children, two names kept surfacing: Mary Bell and Norma Bell. Both girls were interviewed. The contrast between them was striking. Norma was tearful, obviously frightened, and kept smiling nervously, as though the whole thing were a joke she didn't quite understand. Mary, by contrast, was eerily calm, composed, strategic. Police officers noted that she would answer one question and then correctly anticipate the next series of questions, giving answers to those before they were even asked. She was 11 years old, and she was running rings around experienced detectives. But Mary made mistakes too. During questioning, she claimed she had seen another boy with Brian on the day he was murdered. A boy, she said, who had been carrying a pair of scissors. The detail was significant. Scissors had not been mentioned publicly. Only the killer would have known about the scissors. Mary had implicated herself. And then came the moment that convinced DCI Dobson he could not wait any longer. On the day of Brian Howe's funeral, August 7, 1968, as Brian's small coffin was carried out of the family home at the start of the funeral procession, Dobson watched from a distance. There, standing on the pavement outside the Howe home, was Mary Bell. She was laughing, not nervously, not uncomfortably. She was laughing and rubbing her hands together, watching the coffin of a 3-year-old she had murdered be carried away by his grieving family. Dobson later recalled, "I thought, my God, I've got to bring her in. She'll do another one." That evening, both Mary Bell and Norma Bell were formally charged with the murders of Martin Brown and Brian Howe. When the charge was read to Mary, she replied, "That's all right by me." The trial of Mary Bell and Norma Bell began on December 5, 1968, at Newcastle Assizes. It was a deeply unusual proceeding. Two children, sitting in the dock, charged with the murders of two toddlers. Both girls pleaded not guilty. Both testified. Both, at various points, blamed the other. But it was Mary who captured the attention of the courtroom. Despite being 11 years old, she was extraordinarily composed. She cross-examined witnesses in her mind, anticipated arguments, and remained eerily collected throughout. On December 17, 1968, the verdicts were read. Norma Bell was acquitted of all charges. The jury found her to be an unwilling follower, a girl who had fallen under the influence of a far more dominant and dangerous personality. Mary Bell was found guilty of manslaughter, not murder, on the grounds of diminished responsibility. When the verdict was announced, Norma clapped her hands in excitement. Mary burst into tears. The judge, Mr. Justice Cusack, described Mary Bell as dangerous and a very grave risk to other children. He sentenced her to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, an indefinite sentence. She was 11 years and 6 months old. She became Britain's youngest female killer, a title she still holds today. Mary Bell was initially held in a series of remand homes before being transferred to Red Bank Secure Unit, a young offenders institution in Merseyside, where she was the only female inmate among approximately 24 boys. She later claimed she was sexually abused by a staff member and several inmates during her time there. The cycle of abuse, it seemed, had not ended with her arrest. At 16, she was transferred to a maximum security women's prison, a jarring, brutal transition from the relative structure of the young offenders unit. She resented the move. She applied for parole. She was refused. In 1977, she briefly escaped from Moore Court Open Prison. She was recaptured quickly. She lost prison privileges. She made headlines again. Through it all, she maintained that she was not guilty, that she had not committed the murders. She would later abandon this position entirely. In 1980, after 12 years in custody, Mary Bell was released from HM Prison Askham Grange. She was 23 years old. She was given a new identity and granted anonymity, a new name, a new life, a fresh start in an undisclosed location. Mary Bell attempted to disappear. She built a quiet life. In 1984, she gave birth to a daughter, a girl who grew up knowing nothing about who her mother really was or what she had done. By all accounts, Mary was a devoted mother. She had broken the cycle that had destroyed her own childhood. For years, it worked. Then, in 1998, reporters tracked her down to a resort town on the Sussex coast, where she and her teenage daughter had been living for approximately 18 months. When the story broke, Mary's 14-year-old daughter discovered for the first time the truth about her mother's past. The family was immediately moved to a safe house by undercover police officers. They relocated again. Their peace had been shattered. That same year, Mary Bell agreed to collaborate with journalist and author Gitta Sereni on a book about her life, Cries Unheard: Why Children Kill. In it, Mary spoke for the first time publicly about the abuse she had suffered at her mother's hands. She did not use it as an excuse. She was clear about that. According to Sereni, Mary Bell does not claim she was wrongly convicted. She freely admits that the suffering she endured as a child does not justify what she did. In May 2003, Mary Bell and her daughter won a landmark case in the High Court, securing lifelong anonymity for both of them. It was a legal first in Britain. Her current whereabouts are unknown and protected.